Grand Chapter 1. Title: A Map in a Hollow Glass. Subtitle: Finding Life's Vintage in 40 Vineyards. Forward: Wine as a Story. The journey begins where the map ends. People often ask me why I love wine so much, or what the point is in studying such a complex and demanding spirit. Whenever they do, instead of offering a textbook answer, I produce an old, weathered leather notebook. Within its pages lies the damp scent of French earth, the heavy mists of Italy, the searing Spanish sun, and the very breath of the Danube. It is a dense record of the vibrant spirits of America, Chile, and South Africa. When I first encountered wine, it felt like an insurmountable wall, thousands of producers, labels in foreign tongues, and an impenetrable hierarchy. But my world changed in a small wine bar in Lyon when I met my mentor, Marcel. As he poured wine into an empty glass, he told me that wine is not just a drink, but a map that allows you to walk through the history of the land. From that day on, I set out to find the landscapes hidden within the glass. I learned of resilience from vines that rejected fertile soil to root themselves in barren granite. And I discovered the beauty of patience in old vintages that had endured 30 years in the darkness of a cellar. This is not a mere guide to grapes and regions. It is a story of the world seen through the lens of wine, a record of how cold knowledge transforms into warm, stirring emotion. From the aristocratic grace of Bordeaux to the humble rose of a nameless village, these 40 vineyards each spoke to me in their own unique voice. Now, I invite you to set an empty glass before you. As you turn these pages, let these stories be your gentle guide when the labels feel overwhelming. Just as the fragrance of wine truly sings, where study ends, by the time you close this book, you will be drawing a map of your own life, of the 10,000 stories that could fill your glass. I hope this small record becomes your warmest first page. Chapter 1: The Traveler's First Glass. Learning about wine is not about awakening the palate. It is about reawakening one's perception of life. 1. A night in Lyon, drawing a map in an empty glass. June, a 30-year-old architect, sat in Le Chemin, a quiet wine bar in Lyon. On his table sat a single glass of an anonymous wine and a blank notebook. To June, who had always believed that alcohol is just alcohol, the proprietor, Marcel, approached with a knowing smile. Marcel remarked that June looked like someone who wanted to read a map, not just drink wine. He took the notebook and drew 3 large circles: the variety, the land, and the people. These, he explained, were the 3 pillars that held up the universe of wine. 2. The canvas, the personality of the grape. Marcel said that learning wine is like a painter, choosing his pigments. As he handed June the first glass, he introduced it as the queen of white wines, Riesling, and encouraged him to breathe it in. As June inhaled, he was met with the zest of lemon and green apple, and then a surprising, sharp hint of petrol. Marcel explained that Riesling is high-toned and sharp. Then he presented a Chardonnay, noting that when aged in oak, it carries notes of butter, toasted bread, and vanilla, making it far heavier and more luxurious. He then moved to the 2 giants of red wine. He described Pinot Noir as thin-skinned and pale, evoking the delicate grace of cherries and strawberries. Cabernet Sauvignon, however, he called the skeleton. It is thick-skinned and bold, rich with tannins that provide structure. It is a powerful style, filled with blackberries, bell pepper, and oak. 3. Texture on the canvas, the magic of terroir. June was fascinated to realize that wine tasted of more than just grapes. Marcel pointed to a photograph of jagged rocks. He explained that the same Pinot Noir planted in barren gravel versus fertile clay will become 2 entirely different souls. This is called terroir. It is the soil, the climate, the terrain, and even the mist that clings to the hills. Wine is a bottled record of the land's own voice. 4. The alchemist touched the 5 steps of tasting. Marcel initiated June into the ritual of true enjoyment. First, see the wine by tilting the glass a young red as violet, while an old one hums with the color of brick. Second, swirl the glass to wake the aromas with oxygen. Third, sniff deeply to find the fruit, flowers, spice, and earth. Fourth, sip a mouthful with a bit of air, to feel the balance of acidity, tannin, and alcohol. Finally, savor the finish and notice how long the story lingers. Epilogue: the moment the map is completed. Before he knew it, June's notebook was full. Marcel poured one last glass and said that wine is not an exam with right or wrong answers. It is a journey where you imagine the French sunshine, the stone walls of Austria, and the mists of Hungary. He asked June if he knew what the best wine in the world was. When June hesitated, Marcel smiled and said, "It is the glass that is in front of you right now, and the person you share it with." For the first time, June didn't just taste alcohol. He heard the story of the earth itself. On the final page, he wrote that wine is not something to be drunk, but a way to travel through the time of the land. Grand Chapter 2 The Vault of Memory Training the Senses. Chapter 1 Aromas of the Soul. The air in Le Chemin, a small wine bar in Lyon, was thick with the scent of aged oak and soft conversation. Since his first lesson with Marcel, June had returned every week. His notebook was now a dense treasury of information, tasting notes, varietal characteristics, and even the Marangoni effect, the scientific phenomenon behind the tiers of wine that form as surface tension shifts between alcohol and water. Yet, despite his growing knowledge, June's nose still struggled. He could not yet pinpoint the precise gasoline edge of a dry Riesling or the buttery embrace of an oak Chardonnay. You are drinking with your head, June, Marcel said gently. Wine is not a puzzle for the intellect. It is a conversation between the nose, the tongue, and the heart. Marcel told June to close his eyes and handed him a glass in silence. Breathe, Marcel commanded. What do you find in the glass? With his eyes closed, June let his senses wander. A vibrant, tart red fruit dominated the air. Then, a spark of recognition. Cherries, June whispered, and wild raspberries, like the ones I used to pick in my grandmother's garden when I was a boy. Marcel smiled. Exactly. That is Pinot Noir. Wine has a way of tapping into our subconscious. It began as a simple fruit aroma, but it has now transformed into a bridge to your childhood. Marcel began to categorize the layers of scent for him. Primary aromas come from the grape itself, the fruit, the flowers, the herbs. They tell the story of the vineyard's youth. Secondary aromas are born in the cellar, the yeast, the oak, the butter, and the bread. They reveal the hand of the winemaker and the wine's transition into maturity. Tertiary aromas emerge through time: leather, tobacco, mushrooms, and truffles. These are the marks of wisdom and the slow passage of years, whether through the slow breath of oxidation or the quiet rest of reduction in the bottle. These deep notes represent the wine's soul. From that day on, June practiced. He sought secondary aromas in his morning coffee, and tertiary notes in the scent of damp earth during his evening walks. His brain was building a vast vault of sensory memories. Chapter 2 The Art of Balance. Balance, Marcel explained, was as vital as aroma. He presented June with 2 glasses of the same varietal. One was sharp and electric with acidity, the other was soft and muted. Acidity is the spine of the wine, Marcel noted. Too much, and it is sour; too little, and it is flat. Wine is like music, every note must be in harmony to create a masterpiece. June began to feel the weight of the wine on his tongue, its body. Some were light as water, others full and coating like milk. He discovered that tannin was more than just bitterness in a great red. It felt like a caress of fine velvet against the palate. When acidity, tannin, sugar, and alcohol support one another, Marcel said, that is when greatness is born. Chapter 3 Vintage and Consolation. One evening, June arrived dejected, lamenting a failed architectural project in Barcelona. Marcel quietly uncorked a weathered bottle. This is a 1998 vintage, Marcel said, the year you were born. As the cork came out, a faint scent of vanilla and earth filled the air. The first sip was a revelation of dark, concentrated fruit. That year in Bordeaux, it rained all summer, Marcel recounted. People whispered of a ruined harvest. But in autumn, the sun broke through in a miracle of light. The vines endured the struggle, and produced some of the most intense fruit in history. He looked June in the eye. Your failure is not the end. Like the vine enduring the storm, you too will grow deeper and richer through this season. Wine is more than alcohol, it is the liquid story of our lives. June never forgot that 1998 vintage. His notebook evolved. The clinical descriptions of petrol and raspberry were replaced by personal stories. The wine that mirrors my birth, or the glass that offered comfort in failure. He was no longer studying wine, he was experiencing it. The empty glass had become a mirror, and the map he drew was now a compass for his own life.